Hey everyone! So I know I took a little bit longer getting back to, you know, talking about movies and particularly the Rocky series. Um, so here I am again back talking about Rocky 6, aka Rocky Balboa. Alright, so the first Rocky, I love. The second Rocky, love. Third Rocky, I love. Fourth Rocky, love. Fifth, I don't really love. Six, yeah, I kind of love it. All right, so Rocky Balboa, Rocky 6, takes place in 2006, 16 years after Rocky 5. Yeah, yeah, Rocky 5 was 1990. Yeah, so 16 years after that. And in that time, Adrian has passed. Paulie's still around. Rocky's son has grown up and has gone, I believe, into marketing in the big city. You know, he's pursuing a career in that. Rocky's boxing career is completely over at this point. He's running a restaurant called Adrian's, which is that is a sweet touch. Um, where he mainly just talks about to the customers about his experiences and just fun little stories that he had during his boxing. I can't talk. His go at boxing. And he's at a point in his life where I guess you'd say he's going through a bit of a midlife crisis because he obviously misses his wife. You can tell that he misses boxing. He's looking back on old memories and visits places like where Rock and Adrian had their first date. He's talking to Paulie about all these times that they had together, and he's going through a bit of a depression, and you can tell that because of all these things that have kind of built up inside of him over the years since he's quit boxing, with Adrian passing and him being a bit estranged from his son, that he's built up quite a bit of tension and even anger because of all this, and he tries to find a way to let it out, and the only way he knows how to let it out is to possibly get back into boxing. And he doesn't even want, he says that he doesn't even want to go like big or anything. He doesn't want to go professional again or anything. He just kind of wants to do some small fights just to be able to get that as he calls it, that beast that he has inside of him out, so that he can find some peace. Because I mean, clearly anyone going through missing their passed away wife, their deceased wife, and also dealing with the fact that he is getting older. I'm sure that has a lot to that gets to someone. And just like the first film and the second, this is an emotional powerhouse from like start to finish. It tugs at those heartstrings and it doesn't let go. It's rough, and you just kind of you just see this progression with Rock, him almost at a point where he's just rolled on his back, not necessarily and died, but kind of given up the fight, not necessarily the boxing, but just in his life, he feels like he has nothing to fight for anymore, so he's just trying to get by day, but he still keeps looking back, and it's still affecting him more and more, and you really want Rocky to get through this, and it really, really does sort of lean on whether you've seen the last films, any of the other films, because if you have, it really helps invest you into this character, and you just kind of want him to really overcome his depression and his anger and his midlife crisis, I guess you'd call it. And once he reveals that he wants to get back into fighting, everyone's treating it as a joke. His son calls him crazy. Everyone's saying you're too old for that. Even the committee that he goes to get his boxing license back, he passes, but they say, in all good consciousness, we can't allow this. And it just adds to the frustration to the character and the frustration that you feel for him during this. And it's like, it feels like no one is giving him the opportunity that he needs to just kind of survive being old, like, I mean, I'm sure we will all, if you haven't already, get to an age where it's like you wish that you could do something, and Rocky Balboa is at this point where, he's at an age where he still can, maybe not as well as before, not nearly, but he still can do something to make him happy. He's still capable, and he wants to and needs to do it in order to at least find peace within himself to get by for the rest of his life, And luckily for him, he finds, I believe, the committee gives him the license after he gives this really emotional, speech to them. And it keeps cutting back throughout the movie to this other professional boxer that has been accused of not being given a real, true fight to challenge him. And so then all of a sudden, they're, on like ESPN, they show this simulation of a fight between Rocky Balboa in his prime and this new guy, to see like who would have won, and it shows that Rocky would have won. And that gets both sides curious as to like, well, I mean, I know I'm not in my prime anymore, but what could happen if I do fight this guy? And it gets to a point in the movie where he reaches out to Rocky, and the fight happens, of course, and I won't spoil whether or not Rocky wins or Rocky loses, but it's pretty satisfactory how it goes, how it ends, in my opinion. I really do love this movie, from the direction, which is solid as hell. It feels very much so like a part of the original films, particularly the first and second, in terms of its style and direction, and the arcs that Rocky in particular has to go through. The editing is solid. Sylvester Stallone is the director as well as the writer again, like he was in the first 4, and he even wrote 5, but let's just skip 5. Yeah, no, everyone does a fantastic job, and I root for Rocky from start to finish again. If I have any complaints, I do have a couple, and they aren't movie breaking, but they're enough to where thanks, Felix. They're enough to where they are problems, however minor you may see them. One is the villain, I guess you'd call him, the professional young boxer that Rocky has to face. He's pretty bland, honestly. There's nothing to his character or even his performance that's all that interesting or that particularly well done. Although from what I understand, he is an actual boxer, or he was in real life at that time in 2006. I can't remember his name. And Sylvester Stallone took him on and thought, well, it'd be easier to just teach a guy who already knows how to fight to act rather than teach an actor who already knows how to act to fight. And to an extent, I understand that approach, and I do appreciate that and respect that decision. But at the same time, he didn't give anything to me, honestly. Every time he was on screen, I kind of checked out a little bit. Now, I wasn't angry or necessarily bored per se, but it was definitely the weakest character and actor in the entire movie. So that knocks it down a little bit for me. And also, one other thing, and this is me nitpicking, I believe, but for some reason it's always bothered me, and that is the style of which the end fight is filmed. They chose to film a huge portion of the end fight with like television cameras to make it feel, which I understand why they did it. They wanted to make it feel like how a modern boxing match would look. Like, it does look like you'd see this on television, because they actually have a real stadium that they filmed this in. They actually have the cameras that they film these fights with, or the ones that they did at the time in 2006. But to me, I much prefer it actually looking like a film rather than something I just see on TV. I understand completely why they did it that way, to make it feel more real, like give it a like this it actually is happening kind of feel. Like you're almost actually just watching a fight on television that you're catching on TV, I totally get that, but for me, I would much prefer it to have just kept its aesthetic from how it looked in the first two acts, which was very reminiscent of how Rocky 1 and 2 looked. It just looked more theatrical to me, rather than, this TV footage. It's not necessarily bad, and if I remember correctly, towards like the second half of this end fight, it does drop that, and it does do some pretty stylish stuff with coloring and black and white and all that. It actually gets pretty stylish in its direction after that. Those are my only two complaints I have about this movie. Other than that, this movie is great. It really is. It's a great fucking movie. And in terms of like sequels that come out years and years and years later from previous installments or previous originals, this is pretty high up there. It really is. It's really well done. It's beautifully made. For the most part, it's beautifully acted. Sylvester Stallone gives this his all, and if this had been the last time I ever saw Rocky Balboa, I definitely would have been satisfied. For a long time, it was the last time we saw him for about 9 years. So and I was completely content with it being his last go. Honestly, I was like, yeah, no, this is how you end the series, not how Rocky 5 did it. Rocky Balboa, that's how you do it, and I love it. All right, so those are my thoughts. Stay tuned for when I finally get around to discussing Creed in preparation for Creed 2 coming out. Fucking hyped for that. All right, take care. Bye.